We need to take you up to the office with us, and I had some questions for you. I have another investigator who wants to talk to you.
About what?
This is Mark Douglas Burns at his front door in Ogden.
What is this about?
Acting confused as he confronts officers who had been looking for the Clearfield rapist for decades.
I remember probably almost every detail about this case because some cases sit with you in your heart, some in your mind. This one was both.
The victims were at least 11 random women in Utah and Wyoming from 1991 to 2001. The youngest survivor was 11 years old.
I do carry some burdens, and that's one of them. We thought we had a serial killer in Rock Springs. We didn't know we had a serial rapist. We didn't know we had a serial rapist.
Do you want to restate that part?
Well, yes. That's just, like, I don't know why killer came out. There might be there could be a reason, actually.
The reason is because Mark Burns eventually started to talk.
Why on earth would they send somebody from SWAT for me?
Now confessing to unsolved murder cases in Arizona, Wyoming, and Oregon. Law enforcement agencies across the country now believe the serial rape suspect being held in Davis County is also a serial killer. And when he met with us, he said the same thing, calling himself a sexual deviant, a predator who had a compulsion that was irresistible.
The monster inside had to come out. Do I feel bad for Mark? No. Do I feel bad for the victims? Yeah, absolutely.
This man used to be Mark Burns' boss for a short time at a trucking company in Brigham City. He says one day, Burns quit to work for a different company across the street.
He seemed to want to go up in the northwest, and our neighbor up the road is the one that runs those routes.
Did he say why he liked those routes?
You know, he never did. He wanted to go that direction. That's where he wanted to travel.
Microfilm documents archived in the 70s show before Mark Burns was a truck driver, he was a Marine and a convicted rapist who was supposed to die in a gas chamber on May 3rd, 1974. He folded up a small piece of paper to jam the lock at a McDonald's restroom in Jacksonville, North Carolina. He waited for someone to walk through, followed her in as she struggled with the door, and then raped her at knife point while her husband ate in the dining room.
Lethal gas. May God have mercy on his soul. If he was convicted, how come they didn't keep him?
The question is difficult to answer because 45 years later, the attorneys and judges involved in the case are now dead. But in 1975, the laws in North Carolina changed. Death sentences were supposed to be reduced, but only for rapists who committed their crime after April 1974. Mark Burns' case was in January 74, but still a judge made an exception, resentencing him to 25 to 30 years. The documents do not state why this judge ignored the guidelines of a new law that should have still kept Mark Burns in the gas chamber.
Somebody that's that heinous a crime, I've always been in favor of capital punishment.
I'm not the biggest fan of it, but if I was a parent, especially of one of the children who was raped by him, I might feel a lot differently, because then your mother bear comes out and get out of the way.
The day Mark Burns' death sentence was vacated, attorneys say they could not reach the 18-year-old victim, and she did not attend court that day. Today, she would be about 63 years old, but we also have not been able to reach her. When we asked Mark Burns what happened, he said he believes it was an agreement between prosecutors and his defense attorney at the time.
This is such a long string of crimes, the trail that he left behind, Adam. What happens next now that he's confessing?
Yeah, well, he told me that his goal is to receive the death penalty. He's in the process right now of changing his plea from not guilty to guilty because he wants to receive that death penalty. He says he doesn't want a plea deal. He just wants to die because it's the only thing he has left to give his victims. Wow. We did have an interview with him yesterday. We were not allowed to record it. So the next step for us is to get a copy of that video from the jail, and we will be doing a follow-up story.
Because they recorded it for you, correct?
Correct, correct.
Now, is there any guarantee that in pleading guilty, he will in fact be sentenced to death?
No, because his cases here in Utah are all rape cases. The homicides were in other states, so he's now waiting to be charged in those cases. He hasn't even faced those charges yet, so he's hoping that either Oregon, Arizona, or Wyoming will give him capital punishment.
Hey, good afternoon, Mark. How are you doing? You hear me?
I'm well, Adam. Yourself?
Do you get a lot of visitors?
No, you're the only ones I've ever gotten.
His name is Mark Douglas Burns, but for years, when police were trying to figure out who he was, their cold case suspect was only known as the Clearfield Rapist.
Adam, what a break in the case.
We have a suspect now for the first time in almost 30 years. They were able to get this guy by looking at his DNA. Police say this man would often blindfold his victims and then forcibly rape them. The details are very, very disturbing. He lived an undercover life in Ogden as a truck driver. Before that, he beat death row, the gas chamber in North Carolina, for another rape he committed in 1974. In that case, he targeted a woman in a McDonald's restroom.
All right, well, let's see where this goes then.
These interviews you're about to see took place in February 2020. We're only releasing this series now because his confessions to Fox 13 were used as part of an ongoing investigation into new crimes that he had never been linked to before.
I definitely regret everything that I've done. I mean, those people did absolutely nothing to me. They did not deserve what I did to them. If I could take it back, I certainly would, but I can't. Possibly being executed for those murders is the only sense of justice that I can give them.
You were on death row in the past. Do you want to be on death row?
I would rather be executed than spend the rest of my life in prison.
Mark Burns is still facing a murder charge based on a case in Evanston, Wyoming, and has confessed to 2 other homicides, one in Oregon and one in Arizona.
All 3 of the homicides were totally by accident. None of them were planned. The one in Wyoming that they're going to talk about was actually the only female victim, and that one was just a total mistake. My bad, total. She had nothing to do with it. I mean, she did nothing wrong. Totally my bad. It was just a situation that just went to instantly, and I chose the wrong way to handle it.
Do you object to being called a serial killer?
I don't know. I mean, if that's what it is, then that's what it is. And it doesn't, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't. If that's what I am, then that's what I am.
The Clearfield Rapist will never have to face his murder victims, but earlier this year he said it was uncomfortable to face the women he raped.
I would ask the court, show me no mercy.
He robbed me of my virginity, safety, and sleep. Since that traumatic night, I have never again slept through the night, ever. The bravest thing I ever did was continuing my life when I wanted to die. He gave me a life sentence, but he himself was free to live his life.
His youngest victim was 11 years old, but she grew up strong.
So this was just 19 months before I was taken. This is my mom and me. That's a great feeling, never to have to look over my shoulder again.
How did you pick your victims?
I didn't pick them, just whoever left the door unlocked.
Why?
I don't know. I had a compulsion that was irresistible. On the one hand, it was a hunger that was unquenchable, unsatisfiable. But then on the other hand, it fed me. It made me feel complete. I never experienced love. I don't know, maybe these crimes was just some way of me actually being able to present my whole entire complete self as a human being to another person, whether they wanted it or not. Obviously, I would rather be free than in spending the rest of my life in prison. But on the other hand, I've had a great weight lifted off of me because of this now. It gave me the opportunity to provide some closure to my victims. They certainly deserve it.
Do you know how many women you have raped?
I've got a pretty good idea. My memory's not as good as it used to be, but I'm not going to get into that now.
Burns said he has not committed a crime since 2002, when his desire to fulfill his sick need started to fade.
My brain does not function normally. I don't know if it's a chemical imbalance. Maybe I've got an extra Y chromosome. Maybe it's just a loose wire. Up until recently, I've never experienced the feeling of guilt. I do feel regret. I do feel remorse. I do feel sorrow. These are feelings I've never experienced before. I have become what I think is a responsible citizen. I'm a good neighbor. I'm a good friend. I'm a good employee. I think I'm basically a decent human being if it wasn't for the fact that I was also a monster.
Mark Burns is still being investigated for the homicides in Oregon and Arizona. He said he plans to continue confessing and pleading guilty to every crime he has committed. Earlier this year, he was sentenced to 242 years to life for the rapes in Utah. Live in studio, Adam Herbets, Fox 13 News, Utah.
A Fox 13 News investigation has uncovered name-calling, insults, profanity, and general dysfunction within the Salt Lake City School Board. Some of it has been public during meetings to discuss the district's response to COVID-19, but not all of it. Fox 13's Adam Herbets joins us now with what we found.
The Salt Lake City School District has 7 board members, but only a few were willing to speak to Fox 13 about the messages they thought would remain private.
I'm sorry about that. Catherine needs to leave on what we're talking about.
But I'd like to end this meeting now.
Some parents have complained about a lack of professionalism at meetings.
I've seen the chat. I've seen myself get roasted in the chat.
Okay, let's not.
This is an important part. This is.
One parent decided to take it a step further.
What's going on behind the scenes that we're not being told?
Raina Williams, who has 5 children in the district, filed a public records request asking for copies of school board emails and text messages. Together, we read hundreds of them.
I can't believe you went through all those emails.
And some stood out more than others.
I'll let you read it because there's some words not appropriate for church.
You gotta be kidding me.
On July 21st, Catherine Kennedy was upset when the board meeting didn't end on time.
We've never stopped at a hard stop when we put on.
Instead of leaving early, she started typing a colorful message to board president Melissa Ford.
I would never talk that way about colleagues or clients.
I mean, if that's a language she uses to express herself, then evidently she needs to go back to school and get some more English words that she can use without using filth.
I move that we adjourn now.
With that, the meeting ended just a few weeks before the start of school, but still no reopening plan for more than 20,000 kids and their parents to start getting ready. During that same meeting, board member Mike Nemelka wasn't texting.
I'm technology illiterate. I don't send texts to anybody.
But he was playing solitaire.
I'm not gonna lie, I guess sure I did, but I knew what was going on. Playing solitaire is no different than those guys in there texting while they're listening to what's going on.
Records show board members Nate Salazar and Sam Hansen exchanged at least 200 text messages, often complaining about parents or principals who disagree with their opinion to keep students online.
I'm frustrated that a decision hasn't been made yet.
One of their targets was Jared Wright, the principal of West High.
Gosh, guys, that's just so backhanded. Jared Wright was the principal of 2 of my sons. He has an excellent reputation.
In some cases, they don't respect the principals at all.
Mike Nemelka's biggest concern has to do with emails, especially the ones that were intentionally sent to everyone except him.
Thought you might be interested in an additional set of school safety concerns. I have not bothered to send it to Mr. Nemelka since I doubt he will be receptive.
That's clearly against district policy, and Nemelka believes it's also a violation of Utah's Open and Public Meetings Act, a state law that is supposed to stop elected officials from privately colluding on public policy. The penalty is a Class B misdemeanor.
I was taught this the very first year I was there. You can't even send an email to 4 people.
It's pretty obvious from watching the board meetings that anytime Michael tries to speak, he's kind of written off.
Masks do the job.
Do you think that there are things missing?
Yes, absolutely.
3 of the board members did not supply complete text messages.
Are you Michelle?
Yeah.
My name's Adam. I'm with Fox 13 with the news.
Hi.
Michelle Tuitupo says that's because she typically deletes her messages, which she started doing even before joining the school board. Nate Salazar and Catherine Kennedy have ignored multiple requests for comment.
They need to be very transparent of what's going on. I tried to get along with them all, but they just don't think the same way I think.
Some of the board members are facing public pressure and internal pressure to hand in their resignation. So far, only board member Mike Nemelka has spoken publicly about his concerns, stating he will be filing a formal complaint against Catherine Kennedy, Nate Salazar, and Sam Hansen.
And I'm going to use the investigative report that Fox News prepared as my evidence. And I want you 3 to know that you have negated any positive decisions this board has made and made us a laughing stock of this whole state. I am disgusted at the way you acted and the things that you did in secret.
Unfortunately, the lesson that the school board's teaching here to students and to faculty and to parents is that it's okay to violate the law, and civility is out the door.
Stories like this exposing the conduct of public bodies when they violate the act is very important. They should not be deleting those texts from their phone.
Intentionally violating the Utah Open and Public Meetings Act is illegal. That's a Class B misdemeanor, but attorneys tell us it is very rarely enforced.
Quieto, al suelo todos al suelo, al suelo.
This is video from a 2014 human trafficking sting in Colombia. Members of Operation Underground Railroad working with local law enforcement.
Silencio, silencio.
There were about 54 girls ranging in age from 10 to 16, and they were expecting to have sex with all these Americans.
They're selling these kids to you like they're selling a car or a computer. At our party, they brought 5 11-year-olds, including one little boy, 11 years old, who were being offered as virgins, and you pay a premium for that. That's $1,000.
Many of those who work with Operation Underground Railroad, including its founder, Tim Ballard, and Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes, have experience in law enforcement. They say the issue of human trafficking has no borders.
We do these presentations a lot, and people are like, "You're kidding me. That can't exist here in our state."
For years, Fox 13 has reported on law enforcement efforts to stop human trafficking in Utah and abroad.
Those are real heroes, frontline first responders, firefighters, law enforcement.
Now, Fox 13 News has learned the Davis County Attorney's Office has opened a criminal investigation into Operation Underground Railroad. According to Davis County Attorney Troy Rawlings, quote, "We've received complaints and are in the process of reviewing those complaints. Because of the ongoing investigation, our request for records was denied."
Just one quick thing. You talked about.
I think I'm good.
Attorney General Sean Reyes serves on Operation Underground Railroad's advisory board and even went undercover with that sting in Colombia.
We actually had no idea he was the Attorney General. He just acted humble like everyone else.
On Tuesday, he talked about the great work being done by OUR while receiving an award from Daughters of the American Revolution.
He has proven to the people of the state of Utah that he is a man of integrity and ability.
After the event, Reyes declined to answer questions about the nonprofit.
Do you have any concern about the fundraising?
The Davis County Attorney's Office is also saying little about its case, but Fox 13 has learned County Attorney Troy Rawlings posted a series of messages on his personal Instagram account last month. Quote, "Please beware of any individual, entity, or organization who solicits your money and may be claiming credit for work to protect children that is actually done by our task force. They have had absolutely zero involvement in any of these arrests and successful prosecutions you see on display on the wall of shame in the Davis County Attorney's Office." The messages did not name Operation Underground Railroad directly. According to public records, the nonprofit's revenue has more than tripled over a span of 4 years.
Let's do it, man.
We're going to answer the controversial questions right now. Oh, there's some big ones.
OUR posted this video online last week, which did not address the investigation.
The sooner we answer these questions, the sooner we can all join together.
It has now been more than 4 months since anyone has seen 17-year-old Tylee Ryan and her little brother, 7-year-old Joshua J.J. Vallow. Police say their parents, Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, are not cooperating with the investigation. Chad markets himself as an LDS author, but his books have been pulled from the shelves at most religious bookstores.
Fox 13's Adam Herbets has been speaking to the FBI and law enforcement agencies across the country. Tonight, he shows us the clues they might be looking at in Chad Daybell's books.
Chad's one of my favorite people. In fact, he used to be in Springville, and then we followed him to Rexburg. Yeah.
Depending on how you knew Chad Daybell,
Chad and I go back about 30 years. We actually served in the same mission in New Jersey.
Depending on where or when you met him, you might have a different picture than the uncooperative person of interest at the center of a search for 2 missing children.
He's on the run? Is that what's going on? Or whatever, that he's under suspicion? This is crazy.
A different picture than the man who remarried not even 2 weeks after the sudden death of his first wife, Tammy. Family members say Chad told them she went to bed coughing and never woke up. She was 49 years old, and investigators are waiting for autopsy results to find out if she died from something other than natural causes.
I've recently released my autobiography entitled Living on the Edge of Heaven, where I tell more about my 2 near-death experiences and how that prompted me to write my novels.
Chad claims almost dying left him with 1 foot in the spirit world, the other in the physical world.
He talks about dozens, if not hundreds of visions. That's a lot of clues, right?
Those are absolutely clues. 2 books that I'm going to read first, autobiography and his last publication. Those are where we're going to start. And in true fashion of what you have done, we may see hidden messages in these writings.
Chris Bertram is a criminal profiling expert who has worked with the FBI on other cases, but is not involved in this one. He says Chad is different than most and may have given investigators a roadmap to help find JJ and Tylee.
It's less common for someone to write an autobiography.
Absolutely. You don't see that.
At the beginning of that autobiography is a dedication to his wife, Tammy, who was still alive at the time, my one and only. The book describes marrying Tammy at the Manti Temple and working as a gravedigger at the same cemetery where she would later be buried. He believes their 5 children will have a role to play in the second coming of Jesus Christ. Just one of his many prophecies about the end of the world.
You absolutely have to go follow that up.
His books go on to say the world will end with earthquakes and hailstorms, floods and fires. He believes the U.S. government will require humans to receive microchip implants and that the country will be invaded by Chinese and Russian forces with help from the United Nations.
He believes that what he is hearing, gives him direction in his life.
As for Chad's new wife, Lori, divorce paperwork filed in her previous marriage indicates she was also obsessed with the end of the world, telling her now deceased husband, Charles, she is a reincarnated God who would murder him if he got in the way of her mission.
He goes out there, but he doesn't go that far out.
Lori's family members believe her new husband's books changed her, even though Chad's autobiography states he does not believe in reincarnation.
He's making some pretty strong assertions. He just knows that there's a line and he's going to stay behind that line. We may find out later that religion played nothing into this, that it was all motivated by money maybe, or was motivated by a relationship.
Are those the big 3, religion, love, and money?
I think those are definitely the ones that you want to start with.
This case is so puzzling in so many dynamic ways. Adam Herbets joins us live now. Adam, do we have any idea if Chad's 2 children, JJ and Tylee, who are currently missing, to mention Chad also has 5 other children, How do JJ and Tylee play into his books?
We have no idea, honestly. I mean, so what if he believes that the end of the world is coming? That doesn't necessarily mean that your kids disappear. At least that's not what we read here. We know that he talks a lot about his 5 kids, the ones he had with Tammy, in these books. A lot of the characters in those books are named after those children, but we have no idea how the 2 new kids would play into his visions about the end of the world.